Hello, and welcome to the We Are Power podcast. If this is your first time here, the We Are Power podcast is the podcast for you, your career, and your life. We release an episode every single Monday with listeners in over 60 countries worldwide, where you'll hear personal life stories, top-notch industry advice, and key leadership insight from amazing role models. As We Are Power is the umbrella brand to Northern Power Women Awards, which celebrates hundreds of female role models and advocates every year. This is where you can hear stories from all of our awards alumni and stay up to date with everything MPW Awards and We Are Power.
Welcome to today's We Are Power podcast. Now, I'm sure you're wondering who the hell I am and whose voice this is if you're listening. Well, I'm the marketing manager at We Are Power, and today is a very special episode of the We Are Power podcast as we will be interviewing Simone Roche MBE.
I've been taken over.
Yeah, I'm in your seat and I don't think she likes it.
It's a little bit weird.
So today I am joined by Simone Roche MBE, CEO and founder of We Are Power, Northern Power Women Awards, Power Collective CIC, and honorary captain in the Royal Navy, and my boss. So not a weird day at work at all, this one. So I'm going to start from the beginning, because when I first met you, I remember on like the first day, I just remember thinking you were like the most interesting person I've met, because I found out you'd got an MBE from the Queen, you used to be in the Royal Navy, you're now an honorary captain alongside Daniel Craig and Bear Grylls, and you live on a boat. So it is a lot to take in. So I want to start at the beginning. Now, I think it's also important that people hear certain stories from you today, because I've heard some, but I understand you and how you got to where you are now from these stories. But one question I might not have asked you before, I want to know it from the beginning. You were born in Southport, but what was Simone like at school?
Well, do you know, well, actually, I was born in Billinge, which is out in the sticks a little bit. So I grew up in Liverpool till I was 4 years old, and then didn't move out to Southport or Halsall actually till quite a long time after. But for some reason, I was born in Billinge Hospital. And I'm not quite sure why I wasn't born in a Liverpool hospital. But anyway, maybe that's when we get my mum on the podcast another time. And we'll ask her, what was I like at school? Well, I think I grew up, I was an only child. Absolutely in the gang of a big sort of, I suppose, big Liverpool family, lots of cousins. So whilst no brothers and sisters growing up, I had loads of cousins, and they were like my little tribe, if you like. And having a birthday that was, as I call it, half Christmas, 25th of June, just reminding anyone out there, it was always, we were always together at Christmas and New Year, and then always for the birthday, partway through the year. And I grew up, I think I was shy.
Yeah, I wanted to know if you always had like this work ethic and energy. Did you know what you wanted to go and do? Did you know you were going to go and do something big?
No, absolutely not. No, I don't think I was always average, like at school, pretty average. If not below average. I was good at the practical stuff. I was good at the stuff that I could see a reason for. Yeah. I could see the purpose of doing maths, because if you're out with your friends, you need to split the bill, right? So I could see the purpose of that. I could see the purpose of doing languages, because when I was taking on my package deal holidays with my family, I always pretended to be like the tour guide, and I was always picking up like restaurant Spanish or restaurant, Portuguese or everywhere. And I could see the benefit of that. But out of the other stuff, essay writing, not so much. Yeah. There was no chat GPT in those days, so it was not my friend. But yeah, I was definitely not an academic. I was kind of very middle of the road. So there was never that aspiration for me to go to uni, have a big job. That was definitely not in my plan. But it wasn't like I didn't think I could do something, or I didn't have the support around me to make me believe I could do what I wanted to do. We did an event last year, if you remember, with Kim McGuinness, and she talked about, we go on about people raising our aspirations. We've all got those aspirations. Sometimes it's the opportunities, and I think I was just waiting for that opportunity to come along.
I think she said talent is classless, but opportunity isn't.
100%.
But I think also from knowing you, that makes so much sense, because you like just cracking on. Like you just like getting it done. And having the dream.
I wonder sometimes whether that's being an only child, like kind of thing. You can't wait for your brother or your sister to do something. You have to, you and your imaginary friend and me dog, you just go and do stuff. But yeah, I was definitely shy.
It's hard to imagine a shy Simone.
I definitely was. But I think that being that often going away on family holidays or family trips, I might have been the only kid there, but you learned to be grown up. You learned to kind of go and entertain yourself and talk to yourself and all those other kind of things. But yeah, I know, definitely at school, mediocre, definitely shy. I know, who knew?
I know, that's shocking takeaways there for me. So post-school, you obviously, I know you said before, you weren't sure what you wanted to do. So you went and joined the Royal Navy. Again, not your average, usual decision. So, I mean, give a bit of background about that for people out there who don't know how you got into that.
Yeah, and I think I was doing A-levels. I'd done the wrong A-levels again, I kind of made a decision. I'd left school to then go to a college, so a different environment, a lot freer, if you like, a lot more sort of, rule free. And I'm not going to lie, those A-level years were very much, everyone's 18 in that period of time, aren't they? So there was a lot of socialising, networking maybe. That's what it was, networking. And I think that's where it started. But careers guidance was still, there was nothing really that was jumping out at me. And I remember filling in, people going, oh, you're going to fill your UCAS forms in for university. And I'm like, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't think it's something I want to do. I don't know why I want to go and learn more stuff. I want to go and do. I want to crack on.
There's a theme coming through here.
I know, it is impatience, but there was something around. I remember going into a careers fair in the gym and walking around, and I remember equally filling in a questionnaire that was old school pen and paper kind of questionnaire. I know, ridiculous, right? But I remember filling that in. I remember for some reason circling around the armed forces, and I don't know why. Still not quite sure why. And then in a similar time frame, going to speak to the RAF. They were in the careers in the careers hall, and I went and I applied. But then there was something, I don't know, there was something not quite there for me, and I took myself off to the Royal Navy. And the minute I walked through that door, I feel like I started smiling and I didn't stop. There was just something about the humour and the camaraderie and the good banter. We sometimes talk about banter not being good, but there was good banter, and I felt like this was a place that I think I could thrive.
That's also a good point, because there is that perhaps bad banter around it and the sexism in a male-dominated industry. Now, I know you said you never actually felt different or excluded for being a woman, but you did for being a northerner.
Yeah, I absolutely. And if you think back in that day, it was 1988, 80s, big hair, Again, what was going on there with the hair? But it was in those days where you watched the TV, you watched the news, the national news. Nobody had an accent like you. You can't put a channel on now or a news channel on now without being an accent for every part of the country. And it's totally accepted, but it wasn't. It was very, I'm not going to do my best BBC English voice, but it was that very BBC News voice. And I therefore, felt that I didn't fall. Like I definitely have got a northern accent. It might be a mix of accents, but it's, I never felt like, I felt like there was almost, that was the thing that sometimes held me back while I was in the Navy. Definitely not for being a woman. I never felt that. And it seems daft because when I joined, women couldn't go to sea. It wasn't legal in those days, in a couple of years.
Did that change while you were there?
Yeah, a couple of years in, you got the opportunity then to volunteer to go to sea. And at the same time, I got sort of tapped on the shoulder, and my boss at the time, he was, I think you should go and be an officer. And I'm like, yeah, I don't talk BBC English. I don't think this is, I thought my postcode would prohibit it. Yeah. And he was like, absolutely not. And he was, suppose what we would now call not so much a mentor, but a sponsor, someone who literally opened the door for me, helped me how to navigate big, massive newspapers that you had to understand and know all about world affairs and all that kind of stuff. And it was at that point when I went through Dartmouth, Britannia Royal Naval College, Dartmouth, and that's where I went off and had my jollies and adventures at sea.
Before we move on to this is a question that I want to know is if you were to summarise that time in 3, because I know you love the power of 3, I'm throwing this at you. What would be your 3 takeaways from your time in the Royal Navy?
opportunities. So saying yes to the opportunities was definitely one of those things for me. Building the community. So the people that I met along the way, sometimes you only meet for a flash and a moment in time, but some people, they're there forever. Oh gosh, what would be the third one be? So many takeaways for me. Say yes to opportunities. Absolutely the kind of staying connected, the connectivity, the different types of people you meet along the way. So you've got your network and your community that you meet, but then there's other people that you can meet. So whether you're in a foreign port, whether it's stakeholders or different people at work or associated with the Navy, I just think that was, I didn't know it at the time, but that it was that networking, because I was talking to people from all different walks of life. I loved it.
So I think you can see a lot of things that built what you went on to do.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it took me a long while, even into starting Northern Power Women. It was a good, I think it was 2018, I got the opportunity, I was invited back to a passing out parade at HMS Raleigh, which is where I did my basic training. And it wasn't till that moment, so this is 2018, 3 years after starting Northern Power Women, that it was almost like this penny drop moment. It was 30 years to the day or 30 years to the month that I joined. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why I do what I do. So it's interesting. There was never a plan. I think I always went too fast to then sort of like, Roadrunner, the cartoon character, kept sort of circling back to go, that's where it is.
That's why I did that. Makes sense now. So moving on from the Royal Navy, of course, we got to see where the Northern Power Women, where this came from. Now, I know this story includes warm wine. That is one thing I do know. But for people who don't know this story and about the warm wine, tell them about how Northern Power Women was founded.
Absolutely. Left the Navy. And I always say, best thing it was to join, best thing I did to move on and have another adventure before I was too old to have one, which seems crazy. And I literally dived head first. Told you it wasn't very academic, into the world of events, really. A lot of event and bringing people together. So whether HE Racecourse, Southport Theatre, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the arena in Liverpool and the Olympics. And at some point in that whole adventure, I was in London. So I was commuting back and forth. And I very much ended up, again, building bits of this network, these blocks. And I remember being invited to this event about women in hospitality. And I went to this event and it was a room full of women drinking warm wine, kind of criticising other women and men. And I was like, but what is this going to do? How is this going to shift? How is this going to make a change for women at board level? Because that's what it was all about. And I was just a bit, where's the men? Where's the men? And why is this quite negative? And let's revisit the warm wine scenario. It wasn't even good red, right? But there was just something about that. I thought, right, okay, how could we have done this differently? Because there's brilliant people in this room, but how could we have started talking about the positive stories and what is it we can do?
You've always been really conscious of having that positive talk. We could drag each other down and make it feel miserable, but you've never
It's tiring, right? Isn't it? It's tiring. I've got way too much energy to kind of expend that energy on sort of negative stuff and going in a hole. So why don't we look at the good stuff? Why don't we look at what can be done? Even if it's only a teeny tiny thing, why don't we get the guys involved? Let's get the good guys involved. So right from day one, so we're talking probably, God, as far back as 3 or 4 years before Northern Power Women.
Yeah.
But this was the starting of the collect, and it was starting of me, someone who would never want to be on this side of the microphone, someone who would never want to be in front of the camera. What I really loved doing was gathering great people, platform stages, events, connecting, but with that force for good, with that force for doing really good stuff. And it was, fast forward in that role, I was one day I was coming back on the train from London thinking, why do we not do this up here? Why do we not? Everything I'm doing in London, I'm really proud of, and it was really good. I was really enjoying set up TEDx Whitehall Women with my lovely friend Ruth Shaw, OBE, and amazing woman. And I just thought, what would happen if we changed as opposed to everything happening in London, everything happening at Westminster, what would happen if we went, why don't we look in and across the north? So not just Liverpool, but across, because there's loads of stuff already happening, loads of great organisations doing great things across our cities and regions. And I thought, what happened if we could try and take a helicopter view of all the good stuff and sort of signpost it? Doesn't sound very sexy, but like a hub kind of thing. That's what the intention was to crack on and do good stuff, right?
Crack on again. I think that's the importance of telling these stories and how you've grown up, how you were at school, because I think you can see the themes that are in every day of our brands, what we do, like from the lack of career guidance and you didn't know what to do. We've now got the Power Collective mentoring events, the Power Ups every month that you're really passionate about. The idea of connecting people, you're connecting people daily on our digital hub, wearepower.net. That wasn't a plug, of course.
This is great. I'm loving
this. I'm only
this.
the marketing manager. That was not a plug. And like the idea of community that you've now built of over 120,000 through the awards, like you can see where it all stemmed from before you even knew that it was coming from there, which I think
I wish someone had told me along the way what I was doing. It would have
I'm telling you now, better late than never.
But it's weird when you do that and you don't quite realise, you just know. You just know you just got to keep. And for someone who'd never run a business, I suppose I didn't know any different because I wasn't this serial entrepreneur. I'm entrepreneurial, but I didn't do it with a commercial mindset. I did it out of, suppose, frustration.
It's like when you said at school, you could only do the things where you could see the purpose. And that's what you do now. You follow the purpose and crack on. And it's worked well.
We maybe need a rebrand. We're not powering on anymore. We're just cracking on.
Just cracking on.
To be honest, actually, after the very first awards, I got the opportunity to go on Women's Hour the very morning after the very first Northern Power Women Awards, and I had to take one of the winners with me, which is really difficult because you can't tell her in advance. So it was you're trying to have a conversation with someone in a bar at 11 p.m. at night to say,
you come with me in the morning.
Yeah, and they did. And I remember talking to Dame Jenny Murray, who was the former presenter of Women's Hour, and we were talking about the concept of what this had been the night before, this amazing celebration Northern, and she was like, I get this, you're all about proper Northern cracking on, and I think it's always stuck in my mind.
Yeah, well, taken from the awards and into gender equality, we all know you're Simone Roche MBE, but you were awarded the MBE for the services to gender equality by the Queen. That's correct, yes. And I want to know, was this a real pinch me moment? Because I know that you had it, but really reflecting on it, getting that honour, was it special?
Awkward, because it's about you, if you like. Not awkward. I remember sitting with this brown envelope in the car, and you're told not to tell anyone. And I'm good. I'm behaved. I was in the military. I can follow an order. But I didn't. And I think most people will tell their husband, their partner, and it took me 3 weeks to tell Rob, because I just didn't know what to do. It felt like such a massive responsibility. And then I'd feel nervous about it. What will people think? Will people think I'm not good enough to have received this? Why has this happened? Surely there's other people out there. And then you take a moment to kind of reflect on what you have done, and then more importantly, as you kind of get to learn to live with it, it then becomes that real sense of further opportunity to do more. And that's what it served me for, is to do more. It was never, this was never.
You've read my next question. As I was going to say,
cheating.
Everything we say about, and I actually will say Simone has not seen these questions and does not know, so she must be wondering what I'm going to ask. But we always say about our awards, that's why it was kind of in, that it's the recognition that they get that then propels them on to do the next thing, which is why it's so important, which is what I wanted to know. Did the MBE propel you on to do more things?
Yeah, 100%. It felt like a real gift, to go, right, actually, if we've thought over these years about giving people a platform, a stage and a voice, then I've got an opportunity to do more, to reach more, to connect more, to make more of a difference. And I didn't think you don't think it's going to make that difference, and it does. It really does. And I think the opportunity that you then have, the things that you potentially, I got invited to be an award for the as is the King's Awards now, but it was the Queen's Awards for innovation. So there's things I've been able to get involved in that I don't think would have ever happened. And sometimes I don't like the phrase imposter syndrome, but sometimes you feel like, oh my life, this is a bit, lots of different pinch me moments that you think, gosh, this is amazing. But interestingly enough, I've always felt that there's always been a responsibility for me to write other people's citations because you have the opportunity to. You've
seen firsthand what it can do.
I think if you can write something for someone, and not like, this is an MBE is not something you go on OBE, or CBE is not something you go out and buy. It's something you get recognised for. But if you can write to somebody and go, gosh, this is an amazing thing, you should get, I'd like to recommend, then I feel like we have a responsibility to do that.
Yeah. So I obviously want to talk about the Northern Power Women Awards because you are like a kid at Christmas, the week of the awards, and we can all see that passion. And next year in 2026, it will be 10 years of the Northern Power Women Awards. How does that make you feel?
You know what? I think sometimes, I think because COVID happened and we seem to all sort of stop our world or put pause on things. And then all of a sudden, this has just galloped up. So to have our 9th awards in March this year, and the 10th anniversary, if you like, of Northern Power Women, but next year being the 10th anniversary of Northern Power Women Awards is phenomenal. Because if you think of why they were created, was to encourage people to high five their own achievements, high five that, celebrate that, put pen to paper about, or fingers to a keyboard about somebody amazing, and then encourage that person who you nominate to high five and recognise their own achievements. So for me, we always talk about this not being for one night, as you know. Yes, I am giddy all week. The giddiness starts way early though. The giddiness starts with 70 plus judges doing the judging process.
I think as soon as Christmas is out of the way, it just starts, because you've got the announcements. It's just one thing after another in the build-up. It
is, and we have if the category's got a video, then you've got the video bit. We put all our finalists in WhatsApp groups. The judges are in WhatsApp group. It's like so many tribes of people all rooting individuals, all rooting to celebrate. So the excitement. Can't believe it, can you, that it will be 10 years?
Well, this year's my 3rd year, and even
You are a veteran.
I'm a veteran, but we do live and breathe the stories, and we get to know a lot about them, and the team get obsessed and just as excited, which is...
I remember we did a big reveal last year, didn't we? I think, so we get to a point where Emma and I, we hold the power, don't we? We hold the knowledge of who's going to be in that shortlist, and at some point, because obviously we're collating the brochure and we're collating the scripts and all this kind of stuff, we suddenly go, oh crap, all right.
And we got to tell,
and
it's real.
And then people go, it's exciting, but is those stories? But I say that's where it goes back to the November time with the judges and those WhatsApp groups that you see as the chat, and people, and in the room, people are fighting in the nicest way, really going out, going, this person, I read it this way and this is why. And people get really, really invested, including our fabulous Nina Hussain, our awards host. In fact, we get everyone in.
Meeting Nina was great. She does live and breathe it as well. But I've never asked you this question, and I don't know if you're going to actually need some time to think about it, but do you have a standout story? Has there been a nomination or a nominee or a winner or commended that you've read and it's stuck with you?
I think every year, do you know what, when you're doing the judging process, as we just sort of talked about, I think every time you fall in love, like every time. And I know before you even get to that phase, I've already read through the nominations at least 2 or 3 times. My husband, Rob, he only reads them once, slower reader. But he will read them all, and he will absolutely have his hug list, in a good, because he's like, oh my God, I can't believe that person has achieved this or done this. So, you could be talking about someone who's overcome that adversity of their own child being murdered by knife crime, to then turning that horrific, unimaginable situation into now
saving lives for others.
Yeah, it's things like that you're just like, wow, you can't even. Yeah, you've not been in those shoes. You can't even imagine what that's like to, people like the likes of the wonderful Kira Byland, our Special Olympian, and the stories that. It's not sometimes the stories that happen around the awards. It's when I saw her a few weeks ago, and she's suddenly tell me that she's just off out to the White House for something, and it
As you
all,
do.
you know, it's what happens from it is the propelling that comes from those sort of nominations and stories.
I know what Rob means as well about seeing people, because I realised at the awards I knew who everyone was and I kept knowing their names because I'd lived and breathed it. And then I'd be like, oh, hi. And they would have no idea who I was and why I knew their name. So if I do that to you at the awards, it's because I've read your nomination and I'm not a weirdo.
You get really invested in the, you know, you got all the pictures coming in for the brochure and you got the stories and you're like, oh, I can't talk to you.
You're like, oh, it's them. They don't know you. So last segment. Yes, I'm creating a segment on my first podcast. Are you
check
impressed? It's the team questions.
It's gonna be tough, isn't it?
Yeah, I've checked them, so I had to remove some of Nick's. As this is a family show, so I've got one from every member of the team. I am not going to tell you who's asked who, but some of them are obvious that I know that you will know. So the first one: how do you balance 1 million things and make it look effortless?
Unicycle. I have a really, really good memory, which probably annoys, and definitely annoys Rob. Not annoys Rob.
Simone's got an inbuilt CRM in her brain that she knows everyone's name and number off by heart just somehow.
I think there's no effortless, is there? There's no effortless.
No.
It's I think there's no such thing as, I don't believe there is a such thing as work-life balance or something. Sometimes it's trying to find that harmony.
Yeah.
And I think I try and invest in other things. People will know, obviously, of my side hustle in the Royal Navy. As of last year, I'm now a human castle climber. That's a whole other thing. But I like that sometimes if you can invest in other things. Cooking, bizarrely enough, I love going home and preparing food, because then that takes you away from your phone. I used to do a lot of sailing for the same reason, to be able to detach from the technology, to be able to try and focus. But it's not easy. There's times, or even now, I'll kind of, there was somewhere a few weeks ago and I got on a lift and I just sort of kind of had a mini tiny tears moment where you just go, you know what, this is a bit too much. And then you just sort of take a deep breath and kind of go, right, actually.
And that's the side people don't see. So you make it look effortless.
It's just good. It's good. It's good makeup fixer.
I like this next one. If you could have 3 people sat at your dinner table, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, wow. Here we go. Oh, Michelle Obama, obvs.
I knew it. I told Emma earlier. I said Michelle has got a seat at this table.
Oh, 100. My nan. I'd love to know what my nan thinks now. That would be great. Northern Power Nana. She's not with us anymore. But yeah, my nan was always one that made me believe, like, you know, I could. You know, the Queen? Yeah, because I reckon she got me. It's good table,
That's a
right?
big table.
Yeah, no men, that which goes against the whole vibe. I like, you know, the good guys. But
they're invited, but you've only got 3. So.
To be honest, they've got other tables. they've got other tables.
Yeah. So we've asked this question to a lot of people, so I think it's being fired back at you now. What is your advice to people early in their career who don't know what they want to do?
Oh God, say hell yes. So just say yes and work it out later. I think that's something I lived and breathed, as long as it's safe. But yeah, say yes. Say yes to those opportunities. You never know what's behind that curtain, what's behind that door, who's in this couch when you're going to do a podcast with me. You know, you never know. You never know where it's going to take you. And then sometimes you might not like some of it, but you'll always learn from it.
And there's no prizes for guessing who asked this question. Who's your favourite Peloton instructor?
Robin Arzon. Robin Arzon, yeah. Hip hop Peloton, 6 a.m.
Shout out to Robin.
Thanks very much, yeah. Wolfpack.
Now, I know that you've always said yes to every opportunity, so this one's going to be slightly different to what you would say to someone else. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Do you know what? I think there's elements of it's never too early to build that community around you. So whether you start dancing, whether you start in Scouts or Sea Cadets or volunteering or whatever it is, it's stay connected with the people that make a difference, because you never know where you'll kind of meet again at a later point. I feel like that's really important. It's never too early to start building. I think networking could be seen almost as just flinging business cards here, there and everywhere, and it's not. It's that it's building those networks and communities around you. You never know. Never know.
And I had this question twice. Who's your favourite employee? And remember who's interviewing you.
Oh, what about the ops director, Rob Monks? I've got to say that, my husband, Northern Power man. Otherwise, I'm in trouble.
You'll have tea on the table when you get in there.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Last question.
Other than Anna.
Oh yeah, other than me, because I'm
too late, right?
Yeah. And my favourite question out of them all, and the last one: can we borrow your MBE on weekends? And with an addition of, for strictly work purposes and nothing to do with all the cool events you get invited to.
What would you use it for? Where would you go?
Well, it's just a range with it. Your invitations are just more than I would imagine of planning, to be honest. Well, that is my last question. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to interview. My first interview, Simone being the first interviewee on her own podcast.
The first of your segments?
My first of my segments, yeah. Simone has been twisting my arm on this one for a while, and I'm very glad
you wanted to do this.
I did deep down, but I'm usually the other side of the camera, if you've ever seen me.
But now you're especially in the hot seat.
Yeah, it is a hot seat being on this side. Thank you for listening. This is the We Are Power podcast with Simone Roche MBE.
Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review or follow us on socials. We Are Power_net on Insta, TikTok and Twitter, or We Are Power on LinkedIn, Facebook, and We Are _power on YouTube.